We have to learn from the world around us. And the events that have unfolded over the last few days serve as a really great teachable moment. And we can't miss these teachable moments. We have to learn from them ourselves, and we have to talk to other people about them and explain why they're important. Because if we learn from the events as they happen in real time, we learn from history, then we'll be better equipped to make good, well-informed decisions when future events unfold. And it's hard to understand things as they unfold, but if we have principles based on logic, reason, philosophy, and what we've learned from our experience and from the past, then we're more likely to make good decisions that will better serve ourselves, better serve society, and better serve our children in the future. So it's just very important. A few days ago, Brittany Pettibone and Martin Zillner were detained attempting to enter the UK. They were held as political prisoners for a few days for having what the British government declared to be the wrong political views. And they were denied entry into the country, put on a plane, and sent back to America or wherever it is that they went without ever being able to enter the country. A day later, Lauren Southern attempted to enter Britain, where she was detained, but something else happened. Something very important that I learned about today. So, Lauren was told by the police in Britain that she was being held under the Terrorism Act of 2000. So this is different than what happened to Brittany and Martin. And if you haven't heard Lauren talk about this, look up the interview, go on her channel, or look up the interview she did with Stefan Molyneux. It really is worth your time to watch it, because these events are very important to understand as they're happening in real time. So she was held under the Terrorism Act of 2000, which gave the government of Britain sweeping powers to take away people's basic liberty, their rights to an attorney, their right to remain silent, without it being held against them, and the right to their own belongings. And this was justified to the public when the Terrorist Act was passed as the government needs this to fight extremism to keep you safe, because there's people trying to enter the country that want to shoot you, that want to bomb you, and if you don't give us this power to take away basic liberty from people, then you can be killed. And like so many people do throughout history, the people of Britain succumbed to fear, and they passed the 2000 Terrorist Act in Britain, and now the government has the authority to detain people trying to enter the country, held them without giving them right to an attorney, without giving them a right to remain silent, and who knows what else happens, because someone like Lauren Southern, she's a famous journalist, she gets millions of views on YouTube. It's hard to do anything too harsh to her, but what happens to someone else when they don't quite have the public spotlight? So, instead of taking away the rights of extremists like it's sold, the British government then uses the law against your typical Western civilization, fighting for freedom, fighting for liberty person. I mean, you might not agree with Lauren Southern, but I mean, basically she pushes libertarian or Christian conservative views. I mean, these aren't exactly extreme views in the West. These are the views that the West was formulated on. I mean, if you do the readings of Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin and Thomas Paine, these people were classical liberals, which are kind of in line with what libertarian values are today, although that's skewed. But the point is that it's generally in line. Conservatism is basically trying to conserve what the West has been for the last 50, 60 years. So for these to all of a sudden be determined to be extremism by the government shows how the government uses fear, gets the public to accept the erosion of liberty of another person, another people that they fear, and then uses that erosion of liberty against the citizens of the West. In this case, the citizens of Britain. In this case, Lauren Southern. And, I mean, for example, her views are very in line with the country just voted for Brexit. Well, Lawrence Southern was a huge supporter of Brexit. So, has the government declared anyone who is for Brexit to have extremist views and be terrorists because they're against the European Union? And by the way, speaking of totalitarian rule, the British people voted for Brexit, and it does not look like that's happening. But this serves as a great learning opportunity because it shows how governments use fear to get us to grant the government power to take away our liberty, and then over time uses that power to erode the liberty of law-abiding citizens. And it shows that we have to always assume that when you give the government power, that eventually the most horrible person you can think of will take that power. You have to assume if you give the government power that Adolf Hitler will take that power, that Joseph Stalin will take that power, that Chairman Mao will take that power. Because history shows it's inevitable that corrupt individuals will take positions of power. Just look at how corrupt the United States government is. So, look at what happened there. And then look at America just over the last 17 years. 9/11 occurred, and then the Patriot Act, which was written before 9/11, the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, and solution that was determined before the problem ever took place. And we see this so much where the government either allows the problem to take place, participates in the problem, or just takes advantage of any situation, the same way we see the government try to take advantage of school shootings to take away our gun rights. So, 9/11 happens, the Patriot Act gets passed, and the government needs this to protect the American citizens from radical Islamic terrorists who want to come to the United States of America and bomb us. But then what happens? Well, then we find out from Edward Snowden that the government has abused the Patriot Act, has abused the FISA courts, right? Oh, we need the FISA courts because we need these fast-acting secret courts so the government can spy on whoever they need. So whenever they need to spy on someone, they're able to do it. So we find out from Snowden that the government is not spying on radical extremists. They're spying on they're doing blanket spying on all Americans. We're all getting spied on. They're keeping data on us, and who knows what they're going to use that data for. Maybe a journalist is going to break a story on a powerful person, and now that journalist gets blackmailed so they don't break the story. The public doesn't know. Maybe that journalist gets killed. People die in car accidents all the time. So we find out from Snowden about the NSA spying. And now, just this past election year, we find out that Obama, the entire Obama cabinet, Hillary Clinton, the State Department, created a fake dossier, brought it to the rubber stamp FISA court, and used that dossier to get FISA approval to spy on the top political opponent of the party that held power in America. I mean, this is a terrible threat, just an incredible threat to our freedom, our liberty, our way of life. And it happened because we gave way to fear. We let fear be used to get us to give away our liberty, but not our liberty, just the liberty of people that we're afraid of. But then eventually the government takes that added power, expands the definition of what a terrorist is, right? In Lawrence Southern's case, they expanded the definition. They said, we're going to use this to combat radical extremism. And then they said, well, Lawrence Southern, she's a libertarian, I guess conservatarian Christian. She's extremist. We're going to take away her right to an attorney. And we're going to use the Patriot Act to spy on radical Islamic terrorists. Well, people are being radicalized all over the country, 6 degrees of separation. We just need to spy on all of you. And you see how this can be used so easily to take away our liberty, because whenever they try to take away our liberty, it's never as it's sold. And we're seeing this happen right now with hate speech. And the great examples are in Britain, right? Lauren Southern, has been deemed an extremist because she is alleged to be racist, right? She is alleged to spew hate speech. She received a letter upon being deported from the country, which stated that she's never allowed back in in Britain, because she's a racist. And the evidence they use for that is she once, in Britain, handed out leaflets that said, Allah is gay. You might not agree with that message. It might not be the best way to go about it. But first of all, that can't be racist because, and it doesn't matter if it does. That's the beauty of free speech. We have to be able to have combating ideas. Otherwise, whoever has power will be determined. Well, they'll change the definitions and they'll decide what hate speech is. But Lauren Southern, passed out leaflets that said Allah is gay, and she did that as a social experiment to see how the media would react after Vice published an article that said Jesus was gay. So it was Lauren's way of showing Vice, of showing the world that, one, it's wrong to portray Jesus that way, and two, that it's okay that they did. We need to have free speech. Just know that if you're saying that about one side, you could say that about someone else. And it was a social experiment to see what would happen. And what happened was it wound up getting her permanently banned from the UK. At least that's the excuse that they used. So the UK bans hate speech. But of course the government decides what hate speech is. And we've seen this in Sweden and Germany. And now anyone who criticizes the immigration policies, the mass influx of subscribers to the religion of Islam into these countries, if you criticize that, you're deemed a racist, and that's considered hate speech, and you can be arrested. Social media companies in Germany can be fined millions of dollars if they allow people to publish anti-immigration comments on the internet, because that's hate speech. Now, you might disagree with these views that they're putting out there, but the point is that we have to be able to have these conversations. Otherwise, we don't have a free society, because who's determining what the hate speech is? The government is, the ruling class that's in power. And if you're interested in why this is happening, look up the United Nations migration replacement solution from the year 2000. Blow your mind. I'll leave that to you. So they create these laws that take away our liberty, and they expand the definitions. And the same model we're seeing with speech in Europe, we're seeing used in the United States, except we have freedom of speech guaranteed in the Constitution. So what we're seeing is YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook are censoring people under the guise of hate speech, but they're censoring people like me who are just pushing for free speech. And that's because it's the ruling class who determines what is hate and what is not. Look at the debate over gun rights. Trump came out last week, or 2 weeks ago, and he said, I'm in support of confiscating the guns and then worrying about if someone's crazy later. Well, we can't do that. We have to have proper trials and due process in order to take away people's liberty. Because if you allow the government to decide they could confiscate guns from people they deem to be crazy, well, look how much the government has attacked Christianity and Catholic views in the West. Just look at Lauren Southern and what just happened in Britain. Well, what's to stop the next government, Elizabeth Warren, to come in, and she says, well, anyone who believes in Jesus is believing in some fictional God in the sky. They must be crazy. So the government could come in and could confiscate their guns. You always have to assume that someone worse, the worst government you can imagine, will come in and will abuse the powers they've been given to take away the liberty of the innocent masses. So you always have to side with liberty over taking away rights in the name of succumbing to fear. Now let's look at what just happened with the CIA, because I really like to bring everything together. Well, I believe her name is Gina Haspel. was just named the new director of the CIA. Now, if you're familiar with her, you would find out, and you could do a quick Google search to research this, that she oversaw black operations for the CIA to torture people under the Bush administration. And this led to one person who was waterboarded 83 times in 1 month. And then when this was exposed, she actually defied a court order and tried to destroy the evidence of what happened to protect herself. These are horrible violations of people's constitutional rights. And again, it's sold to the public as, well, these are radical extremists. Okay, I'm all for taking on radical extremists, but we have to do it with due process. And the reason for that is because the next government could come in and can declare whoever they want as a radical extremist. So Lauren Southern is a big YouTube personality with millions and millions of views. But what if she wasn't? Would she have been under threat of being tortured by the British government? Well, we're in the West in America. Is the new CIA director, if she's willing to violate basic human rights, to torture someone without due process, to hold and torture someone without proper trial, without legal representation? What's to happen when the next government comes in and declares that you're a terrorist, you're an extremist, Lauren Southern is an extremist, and we can hold these people without due process and torture them? And this is why we need to always side with liberty over fear. This is why we even have to give liberty to our enemies. It's not about weakness. It's about the greatest threat to America has always been from within. And this is what the Founding Fathers tried to tell us if you read their writings. This is what they understood. America is very unlikely to fall from an outside source. We could be bombed. There are radical Islamic extremists, and they could have some success and we could be bombed. Foreign governments can bomb us, but we will fight back. We will persevere. We will survive. But what we can't survive is the surrender of our liberty to combat these people, because eventually the threat will come from within. Eventually your worst nightmare will gain that authority, that power, and when they do, they will expand the definition of who the terrorist is, of who the extremist is, and they will use that to take away your basic liberty, to take away your freedom of speech, to take away your right to bear arms, to take away your right of freedom of religion, to take away your right of freedom of the press, right? Who decides what fake news is? Today, fake news is maybe an example they use of actual fake news. And tomorrow, it's someone trying to spread the truth. Maybe it's me. They take away your right to privacy. They'll spy on you, just like they already have. And one day, they'll take away your right to an attorney. They'll take away your right to due process, and they'll torture you. We need to stop succumbing to fear. And we need to stop succumbing to patriotic propaganda. Just as the left seemingly hates America, the right wing uses patriotism and propaganda to get us to surrender our liberty to fight foreign forces. But the greatest threat will always come from within. And this is what JFK tried to warn us of before he was inconveniently assassinated. I'll let you look into that. This is what JFK tried to warn us about when he gave his secret society speech. Conspiracy theorists will say he was talking about the New World Order. But what I'll say, if you listen to his speech, he was talking about the communist subversion of the United States of America. And there was a great interview I'm going to do a report on soon. J. Edward Griffin, who wrote the Creature from Jekyll Island. I'm not always the most natural speaker, people, but I do have a great ability to make connections and use logic. So, G. Edward Griffin, who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, great book, did an interview with Yuri. He was a former KGB who defected because he thought what the Soviet Union was doing was wrong. talked about this, how the Soviet Union subverted American democracy, infiltrated our institutions, to take away our liberty. And just as the deep state, the communists have taken over under the guise of being progressive, right? A lot of these people, it's just communist subversion. They had to rebrand. They've taken over. The progressives have taken over Hollywood. They've taken over the universities. They've taken over the mainstream media. They've taken over Silicon Valley. They control all of the powerful institutions. They're subverting our democracy to take away our liberty. So we need to stop succumbing to fear, because our enemies are going to conquer us from within. The threat is from within. It's not from outside. I mean, there are threats from outside. But believe me, well, don't believe me, just do the research. Look at what happened to Lauren. Do the historical research. The threat's Russia. Russia might be a threat. I'm sure they did try to mess with our elections a little bit. The Trump administration Trump didn't collude with them. I'm sure they tried to mess with our elections a little bit. They probably had minimal impact, just as many other nations tried to mess with our elections. Saudi Arabia meddles in our elections. Israel meddles in our elections. This is all well documented. The United States meddles in the elections of every country in the world. The beautiful thing of a true republic, a true democracy, is you just put all the ideas out there, and the best ideas will win. I always laugh at the narrative pushed by the media. Well, the Russians hacked Hillary Clinton and gave her emails to WikiLeaks. Well, first of all, that's bullcrap, and if you don't believe me, watch The Unsolved Murder of Seth Rich Part 5, CrowdStrike, and I clearly outline that narrative is a fallacy, so go watch that report that I did. But even if it were true, if the Russians hacked the emails, they're still Hillary Clinton's emails. That's still proof that the Obama administration, the State Department, the Democratic Party rigged the American Democratic primary. They rigged the election. And they attempted to rig the general election. And the media doesn't care, because the media helped in the rigging. So that's proof in itself that the threat is from within. So we need to recognize where the greatest threat is coming from. The greatest threat is the deep state. It's these unchecked agencies. It's the NSA spying on us. It's the CIA covering up Hillary Clinton's crimes. It's the Obama administration, the State Department, using the illegal FISA court, the unconstitutional FISA court, to spy on their greatest political opponent. It's the politicians using a tragic event like Parkland to take away our gun rights. It's the government partnering with Silicon Valley, partnering with YouTube and Google, Eric Schmidt, clearly deep state player, Facebook partnering with the deep state, Twitter partnering with the deep state to censor people who, like me, who are pushing the ideas of liberty and pointing out this corruption. That's the greatest threat. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really thought this is an important learning opportunity, so I hope you share this message. I hope, tag your liberal friends in this video. Post it on Facebook. Tag 5 of your liberal friends in this video, because these are the people we need to reach. And tag your hard, most right conservative friends in this video to show them why we can't always succumb to patriotism to give away liberty in the name of protecting America. That we need to always side with liberty, because whether you're on the left or the right, in the end, siding with liberty protects us all. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow me on my other social media, because I'm sure I'm going to be kicked off YouTube soon, TomFFRnews on Twitter, Tom Anderson on Facebook, FFRnews on Facebook, Tom Anderson on Steemit, Tom Anderson on Gab. I will be making a second YouTube account shortly, because I'm sure they're going to delete this one. I have a current copyright fight going on with Channel 4 in Britain. You got to give it to me. I really don't care to back down, in all honesty. I've learned a lot about myself with this, because when I started making the Seth Rich documentaries that I broke onto the scene with, you start reporting on someone's murder, you start to realize that the world's not all fuzzy and maybe it's not the safest thing to do. But we have to have integrity. We have to stand up for what we believe in. So please follow me on my other social media, share this link, and if you wanted to support me financially, help free up my time, because I want to become my own news agency. I will fight for liberty. I will fight for individual liberty, our rights, the Constitution, and all persecuted people in the world. But I can only do that if I have your support. So if you want to support me financially, www.patreon.com/FFRnews. Thank you so much for watching.